overview of the grant. And I will just give you a brief overview of the grant, and then we will directly go to our speakers and hear their perspective on how to write a winning grant, how to think about this and other proposals, how to think about your startup in those specific domains, how to prepare for the entrepreneurial journey ahead of you. So without further ado, I will share my screen, and I will try to be done in 10 to 15 minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. As I mentioned, this is a guidance session for BIRAC's Biotechnology Ignition Grant, and today we are lucky to have 7 participating incubators. I request all of the representatives from these incubators to kindly post your contact information and website details in the chat box. For the paucity of time, and because we want to hear more from our speakers today, I'm not going into what each of these incubators offer you. All I can say is they're extremely accomplished incubators and associated sometimes with very capable institutes. And if you are nearby, please access them for incubation support, especially for your big project. The speakers for today are Dr. Ramchandra Gadre. As I mentioned, he has years of experience. He's associated with IITB. He has been, both of them have been outstanding reviewers, both for proposals as well as technical presentations. Before the technical expert panel, they have served as panelists for a long time with BIG. And other BIRAC projects as well. And they have years of experience in this domain that they will be happy to share with you today. So if you have any question for our speakers, please feel free to raise your hands and unmute yourself. We'll allow you to unmute yourself and ask the question. Now, today we are here because the 21st cycle of the big grant is currently open, and it will close on the 16th of August at 5:30 p.m. Through this session, I will give you a very brief overview about this grant. Again, I will be having interactive one-on-one sessions, interactive sessions, where I give you more tips and discuss more about the nitty-gritties of the grant with you. I have these on Mondays, and I will invite you and send you the registration link for the same. For today's session, I just want to give a very brief and broad overview. Again, please remember, do not post your questions in the chat box. To all participants, please post your questions in the Q&A box from which we can take them up and resolve them. The chat box should be used by only the panelists to provide their contact information. Again, the Biotechnology Ignition Grant is a flagship program offered by BIRAC, Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. This is not a research grant, so many of you academics might be familiar with research grants from DBT and DST. However, this is an innovation proof of concept stage. Now, this grant, almost 20 calls have been completed of this grant, and this is the 21st call. And SINE-IITB Bombay became a big implementation partner in 2019. Since then, we have supported almost 24 grantees in a sector agnostic manner. Now, this grant provides you with up to 50 lakhs of support in grant money to take your idea or your small scale proof of principle to a proof of concept stage, which means that an MVP, a minimal viable product, or a prototype or a technology that is closer to the market, whose concept like you have established through this grant. I will go over some of the eligibility criteria very soon. Just to highlight here that this has been a very impactful venture from BIRAC, which is the Biotechnology Innovation Research Assistant Council, and it is under the umbrella of DBT, the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. So they, through BIG, almost 50 products have been launched in the market thus far. More than 500 innovators have been supported through this grant. And if you were lucky enough to be in the BIRAC's 10-year celebration in Delhi this year, most of the technologies highlighted, most of the innovators highlighted there were successful BIG grantees. So what does this grant do? Basically, it has several advantages. First of all, it takes, it helps you evaluate your idea further. You have domain experts looking at your proposal, providing their feedback, giving you, their insights on how to further improve or refine your product. This service you're getting basically just by applying through this grant. And it is a very invaluable, this advice, this mentoring that you get through this grant. The other thing is, immediately, if you're a successful BIG grantee, the project that you will work on, the product or technology that you will develop, will get a nationwide platform. And also, it is a foot through the door of other BIRAC funding opportunities, because BIRAC has several follow-on grants as well to support you at every stage of your product development. And so BIG is a good first step. Now, just to highlight some of our BIG grantees, as I mentioned, we've already supported 24 BIG grantees since 2019, the fall of 2019, and many of them are in the medtech category, many of them in IBT, many of them in agri-tech. If you want to go into detail as to what these projects were and the portfolio of the companies, you can visit the SINE-IITB. Now, you can apply as an, if say you do not have an incorporated company at this stage, you can apply as an individual, but please remember that this grant promotes entrepreneurship. It is to promote the start of your venture. So once you're a successful grantee, you will have to incorporate a company. So depending on whether you are going to be successful with this grant or not, you should at least be in the mind frame that I am going to start my entrepreneurial venture very soon, at least in the next 6 months. If you're unsure about that, or you're an academic who cannot start a venture real soon, then there are other such commercialization or such proof of concept grants available from BIRAC that can support you. Now, just a few key points of eligibility. Again, whether you're applying as an individual in the individual category or you're applying on behalf of a company, you have to provide a passport as a proof of nationality, and you have to be an Indian citizen. If it's a company, the majority shareholding should be by an Indian citizen. In case of the individual, you should have completed an undergraduate degree. If you are very close to completion, say you're in your final semester, you're just waiting and you will get your degree in a couple of months, you can still apply. As the evaluation process progresses, you will have completed your degree, been eligible for this grant. Now, you should not have, as an individual, have any shares in another company. That automatically means that you have to apply on behalf of that company. Okay, so you cannot apply as an individual anymore. Now, for all of you who are going to apply in the individual category, you should have identified an incubator where you're going to carry out your work. For those who are unfamiliar with the term incubator, an incubator is an organization, a legal entity that basically provides you support in the early stages of your venture. This support could range from structures, industry connect, ranging, and tangible. You should receive a letter of intent from the incubator. Now, if you are already incubated somewhere, you can upload your incubation support letter. If you're not incubated anywhere, this is what I'm saying next is specifically for you. You have to approach an incubator and request them to provide you with a letter of intent for this grant. What this letter of intent states is that if you're a successful grantee, that incubator will allow you to execute your big project within their premises and provide you with all of the infrastructural and other support that you will require. Now, most incubation centers will put you in a pre-incubation program specifically for this grant, where there will normally for SINE-IITB, we have no clauses for equity or revenue sharing at this pre-incubation stage. Now, if you're in academia, you have to provide a no objection certificate. For instance, if you're a PhD, postdoc student, or faculty, the institute should allow grant, and if you are a successful grantee, to execute the project. If you have an incubator that is associated with with your academic institution, that is fine. If not, you will have to approach a nearby incubator and be associated with them. Remember, you might have lab facilities that are adequate to carry out your project. However, in many institutes, if you work within the institute premises, a fresh IP generated automatically belongs to the institute. So in cases such as that, there should be clear policies for your company or startup to license out those technologies in the company's name. Sometimes if there are no such clear-cut policies, it is better for you to carry out your project in an incubator so that IP can solely lay with you and your company. If you're privately employed, on the other hand, you have to provide a declaration that you will quit your job and devote yourself full-time to your project. Now, for the faculty members who are thinking of applying to this grant, we understand that you will have academic duties that will take a majority of your time. However, this is one of those grants that allows you to hire manpower, so you can hire a few team members who can carry out the project under your supervision. Now, the three key things, if you're applying on behalf of the company, the person who's applying on behalf of the company should hold some shares in the company. The minimal amount is not stipulated. The age of the company from the date of incorporation to the call date, which for this cycle was 1st July, should not be more than 5 years old. So the company should be younger than 5 years. And also it should be either a private limited or an LLP. Proprietorship firms are not eligible for this grant. Besides that, companies often have to share other many more documents than the individual. For instance, company financials, memorandums of association, articles of association, a CA certified shareholding pattern, etc. Now, all broad themes are covered under this grant. Normally, the application is made online, and once all the online applications are received, they're categorized under 4 broad themes. These are healthcare devices, healthcare diagnostics, and healthcare drugs, together with agriculture and allied areas and industrial biotech. Now, under these broad themes, there are several subdomains as well. For instance, in agriculture and allied areas, food processing, veterinary science, secondary agriculture, all of that falls under agriculture. Similarly, under industrial biotech, you'll have options such as clean energy, sanitation, waste management, etc. So these will be in drop-down menus when you're selecting your theme. And so you can find the one that is most suitable. Also, for many solutions, you will get the option of whether it's AI/ML, whether it's IoT, whether it's automation. Those options will also become available to you through a drop-down menu. Now, these are biotechnology themes. If you from a strictly engineering side of things and do not have a clear biology component, or you're coming up with a software solution or an AI/ML based solution, an IoT-enabled device, it should all serve one of these biotech broader domains for you to qualify for this grant. This is a very competitive with several rounds of evaluation. I won't go into too much detail. Just a few broad strokes. There is an initial eligibility we make eligible grant. I already mentioned education with whether you are whether either by a company, all the age of the company, all of that, whether you're providing all, the first round of evaluation is the on-view stage. As I mentioned earlier, all the proposals are received by IRAC. Normally, this is almost 800 to 900 per cycle. So
Yeah, hi. Is the session going? Because we are not audible.
I'm absolutely sorry. I accidentally muted myself. So I'm sorry if you missed some of the previous slide. I'll just quickly go over it. So all I wanted to say here. Okay, I apologize for the technical glitch. I will just share screen again. Please bear with me. Can somebody confirm that my screen is visible?
Yes, it's visible now.
Yes, and can you just tell me which slide, was it this slide, the connection got lost?
Yeah, this one was the one which we were talking.
Yes, sorry, I'll just summarize this. So as I mentioned, there are four stages of evaluation, and that normally takes 6 to 8 months. And there is an online review stage, after which there is a cutoff set. If you make the cutoff, you move on to the presentation round. There's a cutoff again at the end of that, and following which you make it to the final round. And about 48 to 54 proposals are supported each year. And once you are a successful big grantee, the big carry out their due diligence. You can receive money only in a no-lien account. And so there is some groundwork before the grant money is delivered to you in 3 tranches. Now, all decisions in the evaluation process are made by a centrally approved domain-specific experts, technical experts, investors, business leaders, IP experts, etc. As I mentioned earlier, for your written, for the evaluation of your written proposal, 5 or more reviewers look at your proposal and score them. And the geometric mean of that is taken, and at the technical expert panel round, about 8 to 9 technical and other experts, the panelists basically grade your proposal again, and the geometric mean of that is taken for the cutoff decisions. Now, whether you make it from one round to the next, you always receive compiled feedback from the big partner. So this reviewer feedback is extremely critical in your journey as an entrepreneur and in the refining of your idea and your product, your technology. And so it is strongly recommended that you take into account these suggestions that were given to you, incorporate that, and submit in the next cycle. Now, these are some of the criteria on which you are evaluated. The unmet need, it should be a critical unmet need for the country. Again, if you are addressing a certain problem that the country faces, there are other innovators and established players who are as well. And so how you are novel, how you are differentiated from them, should come out very clearly. For this, you might need to do some groundwork. You need to find the gaps in the existing solutions and find out how best your solution meets those gaps. Again, the value that you are adding to your end user. For instance, you could be an import substitution, because if something is being imported at a high price and you've come up with a way to provide it at a lower cost, then that is a very good value proposition. So your innovation is probably going to be an additional cost to the existing solutions or the existing way of doing things. However, if you offset it with sufficient value, then that is going to be looked at favorably. The scientific soundness of your proposal should be very good. Behind every technology, there is a science, right? So whether it is the technology that you're talking about or the validation steps. So the claims that you're making about your technology, you will validate them scientifically. That plan should also be very well laid out. Similarly, the team strength and passion is something that is looked at very favorably. So highlight your strength, have a nice, well-rounded team of complementary skill sets, onboard suitable mentors who will help you from the ideation to further product development. instance, for the clinical side of things, please have a clinician on board with whom you can regularly confer with to improve your product. Last but not the least is the business perspective. For academics in the audience, this is the weakest, this is one weakness, and we are there to help you. You should consult your mentors, revenue for you. What is the market that you're targeting? How will you reach that market? Similarly, who are your customers, if you've correctly identified them as well? Now, just a few points to keep in mind. Always have the bigger or the greater good in mind. So your value propositions should be very clear, besides, of course, the novelty and the difference and how you're differentiated. So the competitive landscape, who is it that you're competing with in the market? What are you providing in terms of certain parameters that they have not been able to provide, which will basically coming back to the whole cost versus value. So somebody should be able, should be enticed enough to pay that extra that your technology, adopting your technology will cost them. Also in the value chain, or in case of clinical side, the treatment pathway, where does your product lie? Who is it that you're benefiting? Is it the doctor, the patient, the hospital? In case of the agri-tech domain, is it the farmer, the distributor, the end the seller of the commodities, or the final consumer of the commodity? Now again, in case of agri-tech, for instance, are you finding a way to better the yield of crops, to carry to help increase the precision in farming practices, or are you helping in the harvesting of the product, the storage and reduction of spoilage of the product? Or are you taking the agricultural waste or the waste of cultivation and turning it into a value-added product? So to understand all of this, you have to do some ground research. You have to understand the ground realities of your application area. You should, the moment you have an idea or a problem statement mapped out, should go out in the field and talk to the actual people who are doing this on a day-to-day basis. For instance, if you have a clinical solution, go over to the doctors, talk to the doctors, talk to the hospitals, talk to the patients, and figure out what it is that their pain points are. Similarly, for other domains, go out and go out into the field and find out where the gaps are and what it is that the pain points that are the ground realities of that particular domain. Again, sensitivity, specificity, accuracy of any method, or say whether it be a diagnostic tool or any other process that you're proposing, these are always important things that you should mention. Also talk to stakeholders and onboard the appropriate mentors. So there are two entities that you will need to identify for this grant. One is the incubator, and I already mentioned why that is so important. The other is the big partner. The big partner will handhold you from when you're ready to write the grant to finally when you're ready with your product at the end of the 18 months. So by the judicious selection of a big partner as well as an incubator, you get the best of both worlds. You get the benefit because all 8 big partners are themselves capable incubators, so you get access to their network. And of course, the incubator themselves will provide you with infrastructure and other support. So by choosing these 2 partners, you will already have you already have an edge over other startups. Again, I come to you here on behalf of SINE as a big partner, and you can reach me. I will post my contact details. You can reach me for any kind of help that you need right away to write and package your grant properly. I can look over your drafts, offer my suggestions, and then of course, eventually, once you're a successful grantee, we will, and also during the evaluation process, we will continue to help you. I would like to mention here that SINE has an 18-year-old experience in the incubation domain. We were one of the first academic incubators, and so we carry with us a rich experience of mentoring startups. And you also, through peer-to-peer learning, will learn a lot through associating with us as a big partner. Now, just quickly going over so that we can hear from our speakers today. Your written proposal is the first thing that the evaluator looks at. So please make sure that your proposal is written well. And this is where you need to show it to multiple people, get their feedback. As I mentioned, you can share your draft with me and I'll be happy to give you my feedback. Talk to mentors, talk to your team members and come up with a well written proposal. Try to avoid repetition. Be to the point with each section and give them the information on which you will be evaluated. Your problem statement should be clearly stated. Often applicants spend too much time on elaborating on the problem statement. What you need to do is the broad strokes most evaluators already are familiar with. You should directly go to what the gaps in the existing solutions are and how you are going to fill those gaps. Similarly, who you're designing this technology for, give adequate details such as the scientific basis of why your approach would work, as well as your market competitors. Please make sure all sections of the grant are completed and that you're providing sufficient data to support all your claims. Again, from the title to the body of your proposal, everything should be well thought out. In the title, please make sure that you avoid gimmicky titles that give no clue as to what it is that you're proposing. The problem statement, the solution, and the end user at least should be reflected in the title, but try to not make it into a paragraph. It should be just a sentence long. Similarly, I spoke about data supporting any of the claims that you're making. You may have validated your technology at a very small scale. You might have a small scale proof of principle. Please provide that preliminary data for evaluators to see whether there is feasibility in the approach that you are proposing. If you have not done any validation and are strictly in the ideation phase, please provide other published reports and other published data that kind of support the feasibility of that approach. If you're sourcing statistics from somewhere to support your unmet need, please make sure they're reliable sources. And if you can, do a little bit of market research or prior art search to make sure that you're not basically infringing on anybody's existing patents. Clarity of thought is required. Clarity of presentation is required. If you are unclear about what your technology is, who it is for, and what and how it is going to better the life of the end user that you're targeting it for, the reviewers will. You won't be able to satisfy the reviewers when they have questions about your technology. So please have clarity both on the technical front as well as the business front, and we are there to help you achieve that clarity. Similarly, scientific rigor, I already mentioned, is very critical, as is the commercial feasibility. So you might have a technology that looks very good at the lab scale or as a potential innovation. However, packaging into a product that will actually sell in the market might be a much more difficult proposition. Here, you need to talk to the appropriate business people to find out what the appropriate market for your product is, who's willing to buy it, who can it be sold to. So all of these aspects you should have some clarity on. Please prepare the budget as per the expenditure heads, and all of this information can be found in a document that's called the BIRAC Big Guidelines that is available on the BIRAC Big page. As I mentioned, budget for equipment that is going to stay as an asset for your company and that you will repeatedly be using. Please do not try to budget for extremely expensive pieces of equipment that is already available with your incubator. Similarly, for manpower, you cannot pay a salary of more than 50,000 rupees a month, and your entire budget should stay within 15 lakhs. Now, consumables and contingency are flexible heads. Within this, you can keep moving the money around to as your need arises. So put some money there. You will need some outsourcing support for fabrication, testing in commercial labs, etc. So put appropriate funds there. Again, the incubation charges that the incubation center that you will associate with, what they will charge, can be budgeted into this. And BIRAC Big also promotes the generation of fresh IP, protecting that IP as part of this project. So you should put some money on IP heads as well. Now, the technology readiness level is something that you have to identify for your particular product or technology, and we can help you with that. This is an early stage grant, and so the TRL should be below 4. Also remember that the 18 months and 50 lakhs is not sufficient for those in the clinical side of things who want to do large-scale clinical trials, or say in the agriculture domain, those who want to do large-scale field trials. So only a small-scale validation, maybe with a couple of patients or up to preclinical trials, can be supported through this grant. Now, if you find that your TRL is beyond what BIG requires, there are other follow-on funds from BIRAC with funding, with a quantum of funds that are appropriate or suitable for that stage of your product development. And I'll be happy to take this offline and discuss with you other options if you're outside the scope of BIG. Now, for the academics in the audience, if you do not have any immediate plans to have a startup, the PACE, AIR, and CRS grants are very suitable for you to take your commercializable ideas and validate it with an industry partner without starting your own venture. This is appropriate for academics who are not just starting out, who have established themselves with at least 5 to 6 years behind them, so that they have completed some project, some government project, published a paper in that particular domain, and carried out a proof of principle in the lab. There is a royalty clause that has been tagged onto BIG since 2016. What this states is that if you are a successful grantee and you, with the product that you've developed through BIG support, if you've started generating revenue, you'll have to pay an annually 5% of that revenue until the 50 lakh. The same is true whether you're doing a technology transfer or licensing out the technology that you've developed with BIG support onto an established player. Just 2 things to keep in mind. Please start the application process early. It is a huge and long grant with several sections that will require your full energy and full bandwidth basically to successfully write. And try to submit a bit early, at least a week in advance, because towards the end, the portal sees a lot of traffic and starts malfunctioning, and you might think you might lose data. You might think you've submitted, but you may not have. If you're applying to us, I request you to kindly write me the moment of sessions in coming weeks. And I will request you join those sessions as well. As I mentioned, on Mondays, I will have an interactive session where I share insights on how to write the grant properly. We'll have this every Monday, and I'll invite you to that. Besides that, please visit the SINE YouTube channel for many such sessions and the website to get an access to. Thank you for your patience and hearing me out. I see Dr. Ramchandra Gadre has already joined, and so I will start with him. Dr. Gadre, you have served as a panelist for the industrial biotech panel, as well as reviewed many written proposals. Can you, from your end, share some insights that will help first-time BIG applicants as well as repeat applicants?
Yeah, thank you, Brother. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to BIG applicants, aspiring BIG applicants. I have been associated with BIRAC for some time now. And as the reviewer of projects, I'll give you some suggestions. Of course, there may be different views of different people. One of my view in many of the projects is that they are written very lightly, very casually. Unless you have a very clear scientific idea or a technical idea that I will produce or prepare and taste this particular activity or this particular product, do not go for it. There's always a hurry. People share information that the last day for submission of this particular application is so and so. So you start writing a project proposal and somehow you submit it. Please do not do that. BIRAC calls are, BIG calls are regular. They come after every 6 months probably. And then you will have enough opportunity in future also to apply for a big call when you are well prepared. In many of the cases, I have also observed that there are, of course, scientific sections in a proposal that introduction, why your active, why your product or why your services or why your project is good, why is it necessary for the country. Then there is objectives of the proposal that I will do ABC. Then there is a section on how will you do it, is a methodology part of it. And then subsequent funding required and things like it. In many of the project proposals, what I have seen is that the first part is fine. The introduction is good. There is always an effort from the people to write why my project is extremely useful or is likely to be useful. But then when it comes to the section of how will I do that, I haven't seen very strong project proposals. There's no clear idea on achieving that particular objective. And then when it comes to that, it is evaluated very critically by the expert committee that whether that person or the person who, or a group of people will actually be able to do that. There are normally a mismatch in objectives, or not normally. Sometimes there's a mismatch between the objectives and the methodology. Facilities which are required for carrying out a particular research doesn't exist either in the investigator's laboratory or the incubator he is talking to or going to work with. And then either he is not skilled or he doesn't have a team member who is skilled enough. All such problems are seen by experts. There are multiple layers of evaluation, as Dr. Bhatt has already told you. Initially, you submit a proposal, it will be seen by five examiners online. Their comments are recorded. Then there'll be a meeting in BIRAC for selection of some of the projects. Then those who are better are called for presentations with their presentations online. Earlier, they used to be actually physically, but recently they're online. And then within those 8 minutes, you should be able to impress the committee that, yes, this is my proposal, these are the objectives, and this is how I'll actually do this. Also, I've seen that people do not consider patents at all. Say they normally go by what their supervisors or their teachers or by their friends have told them, and then they write a project proposal. Please do not do that. There's a very large patent information available, which is free. You can see it under USPTO, United States Patent Information or Patent Organization, USPTO, Patent and Trademark Organization. You can see those patents. There's a website called Free Patents Online. You can see the PDF of all such patents. There's also Indian Patent Office available online. You can see at least the abstract or at times the full document, which is filed by other people. And please understand that patents are, when you do a business, when you do a project, patents are extremely important, not only the literature or what has been written in the textbooks. The third thing I would say that there is also regulatory requirements, that there is something called Food Safety Standards Authority of India. If you're going to work on food related products, the CDSCO, which is in drugs, similar regulatories are required. So if you're going to do molecular biology, then you require your institutional biosafety committee approvals. And I have seen lots of projects on nanotechnology, which are regulated now by DBT's guidelines. So you have to consider all such regulatory and guidelines for while you consider or conceive a project proposal. The last probably I would say is that the money which is you write will come in small pieces. It doesn't come in upfront. So you have to manage your funds very carefully. Otherwise, what happens is that you have no money left in your account when your project is going on, and you actually starve for money. The money will come after a particular milestone is achieved. Once you have said that this is my milestone, when you reach there, the next amount of fund will be released. Otherwise, the funds will not be released. So you have to be very careful about what is it you want to buy. Do not buy unnecessary things. Try to find out an incubator where the facilities which are required for your project are available, even if they are not in your town. If it is available in Pune or in Bangalore or Delhi or Mumbai, go to that place as an incubator. Do not try to be, in my city or in my town. Sort of things will not happen. So that's last thing. Also, people write about a lot of growth in the product. they go sit on the internet and see that US information is available for a particular product, either a drug or a compound or a food product or agricultural service, and then is always written in dollars, so many million US dollars. So there's no point in trying to do comparison or trying to give information which is not relevant to you. Remember that your project or product will be relevant or will have to be relevant to the Indian environment first. If a product is sold in the Indian market, then there's a possibility of selling it outside. Otherwise, the possibility doesn't exist. So instead of getting information from some US website, try to gather information which is realistic in the country, in your city, in the town. Maybe you start from the nearby shops and find out. So it's an effort to, please also remember, this is not only a research project or a research program, because at the end of the product, the BIRAC will always ask you, are you on your own to start your business now? You say that, okay, I'm near there, but I'll need some more money, then there are further schemes available. But if you say, though, okay, I'm going to publish it and give you a report, then nobody's bothered about, your report. I mean, a report will be filed and somebody will read it and say, okay, this was all right. But otherwise, it is of no use to you. So don't waste your 2 years unnecessarily if you do not want to start a business of your own. For investigators from academics, as Brother said, the good schemes are AIR, the academic programs, where there's not a big commitment from your side to start a company of your own. But if you're going to try it for BIG, then probably there will be a commitment from you to start a company of your own. There's also at times conflicts of interest at the institute, that you have done some work for the institute for last 20 years. And then you say, I'm going to use that particular information or that particular know-how for starting my own company now. Unless the institute explicitly agrees to that, you have a certificate from the institute that, okay, you will be allowed to use that information, please do not write a big BIG proposal. Instead of that, you should go for PACE or AIR or CRS schemes. I will not go into those schemes at the moment. Let us confine ourselves for the big program. So remember, it's good science. It has to be good science. It has to be a useful, good product or service in the country. It has to follow all the regulatories. You will have to find. Otherwise, what will happen after 2 years? You will be said that, or you will be told that no, this cannot be approved. Approved by the regulatory, so you cannot use it in the commercial environment. So your 2 years efforts are lost. And then look for existing patents, because finally it should not happen that you do a lot of work for 2 years unknowingly that somebody has already done it and filed a patent and accepted patent on that. So these things, I would say that, and these things are seen by the committee. You don't try to hide that there are no patents. You should not say that, because there are a lot of patents, and the committee is aware of the existing patent information related to your projects also. And then they will find out that this has already been patented 5 years ago by someone, and then you may not have a chance to succeed. So look at the information very carefully, which is already available in the Indian context. Look at the objectives very carefully and methodology, because unless you are sure, how am I going to do this particular work, it will not happen, obviously. So, and the facilities which are required may not be there in the incubator you are talking to. It may be available somewhere else. So try to get those facilities. You cannot buy everything which you require in 50 lakhs of rupees or 40 lakhs of rupees. You have to get facilities available and then use them for your work wherever they are available. I think that's all from my side at the moment. All the best for your project writing, and I hope most of you will succeed in getting good projects from BIRAC in future. Thank you very much.
Dr. Gadri, I just have one more question to ask you. So first of all, what advice do you have for people who are coming in a second or a third time, or even more? So the repeat applicants, basically, some advice for them. And the second thing is in the industrial biotech area, you often have issues with scale up, right? So people have just validated it in a small scale. They have no idea about the scale up, and their competitors are mostly industrial processes. So just if you could just combine these two and give us some advice on that.
Yeah. Those project proposals which are coming for the second time or third time, unless, I mean, normally what happens is that a committee's remarks are sent to the investigator that this project proposal is not approved probably because of so and so reason. Normally, I have seen that there is either no innovation or it's not technically very sound. So people, that's why I say don't write a project proposal in a hurry, because you write it once with the title or some sort of a remarks there. It goes to a committee, and probably what will unfortunately happen, the same panel will see your project proposal again. And they remember that, oh, this particular project proposal had come in last round, and then it was rejected for so and so. So unless there's substantial improvement based on either the comments or from your side, it will have a bad fate, because it's a memory of the panel or some of the people from the panel that, okay, this project proposal was not good and it was rejected. And unless there is something which is different, substantially improved, either based, as I said, on the comments of the committee or the panel, or from your side, okay, I did it, I had made a proposal for this, but now I have got a better idea on the same lines and I'm going to do it like this. Then only it's worth doing it. Otherwise, repeatedly applying doesn't help, because it is the same. It's like a software loop. You do the same statement, it comes back to you with the same answer. So unless you substantially improve it, there's no possibility of succeeding in some other next or third or second or third round. The second thing you talked about, the scale up. I have seen this happening. I have seen this happening in my career also, that scale up is always a problem. So you have to define, and of course, BIG is not for scale up. Please remember that also. But you should have a plan for that. I will do a scale of maybe a shake flask, if it is going to a fermentation or biotech related project, or I'll do these things in the laboratory, but I know how to do it subsequently. Or I'm going to tie it up with a company which is large enough, has got facilities, and have already started talking to them that I have an idea, and then I may come to you subsequently. In practice, please do not, I mean, I would not write a project proposal for BIG for biopharmaceuticals, vaccines, things like it, because they are long-term projects and require a lot of money and muscle and power in this country. Something which is going to be injected in a human being will take at least 10 years for you to go through, except probably the vaccines of COVID, which came into the country within a year and a half. But look at the amount of effort which has gone into that. BIG does not support that sort of such of a project. So although it is a good idea, you have to say that I'll do a clothing and produce ABC and produce it in a shake flask. But then if it is going to be something which is a medicine or a drug for human being or even for animals now, it will face a lot of difficulties by the regulatories, and that neither BIRAC nor you can actually circumvent. It will have to go through the route of CDCO, or if it is going to be food for FSSI, and I would do something which is not related directly to the human health at the moment. I have seen BIG projects on, say, I'm going to do a medical device for scanning brain. Well, it faces a lot of difficulty subsequently. A project is good, person is good, technically very sound, but when the regulatory it comes to, then it goes back. It cannot happen. So I'm not saying that you should oversimplify your projects, because if projects are there which doesn't have any scientific content or any good technical information or good technical material in that, it will be straightway rejected. I've seen several projects in environment for making sanitary napkins and diapers from water ice. I said, why? Well, if it is going to be coming from water ice, I will never touch it for a clinical application or for my usage because of the quality of the material. So consider that whether it is really good. Do not just fall prey for, as I said, fall prey for what your supervisor or teacher or a PhD guide or professor is telling you to write a project. Do not do that. Look for it. Is it going to be your business? If it is going to be your business, then apply for it. Otherwise, it's difficult for anyone to get through BIG.
So we are very lucky to have Dr. Gadre with us today, and he's already sharing very useful insights for this grant and otherwise your career as an innovator. So if anybody would like to ask him any questions, this is your chance. Please raise your hands and we will allow you to ask him the questions. Dr. Gadre, there is one question here from Prabhakaran. How is novelty important to develop a new product in a cost-effective manner?
Yes, if there are two ways of looking at it. One is new product. If it is a new product which is entirely new, it does not exist in this country or world, it is good. But you should be able to say that or prove it. This is actually a new product which I am looking at. Second thing is, I'm trying to make a copy of something which is already there, but with some slight modification. And that slight modification, unless it is patentable, it doesn't stand a chance. Because the incremental improvement is always there, is going to be always there. And also please remember that you are not the one who is going to look at such projects entirely for the first time in this world. There must be lots of people who have already thought of this. They have already worked on it. Either their products are in the market somehow, or they have failed. So you have to look at innovation is of course important, and BIG is for innovation. But there's also, your feet will have to be on the floor. On the ground. Unless that is there, it's just a kite flying idea. There used to be a word in my career called kite flying idea, but then there is a thread for that kite. It should not be a kite which has already been cut. The idea is good, but then it has to be realistic as well. I think that answers your question.
I think Hari has raised a hand. Hari, I will just unmute you.
There's one more question. There's one more question I have seen.
Yes.
Somebody said,
I have two patents on my project proposal.
On my project
will it help me boost my application?
Certainly. It will help you to get a project, get your project proposal through, because you already have an IP on your idea. But it should not also happen that the institute actually owns those patents. If you're working in an institute, then you have patents filed to that institute. There has to be a clear understanding between you and your institute that you will be allowed to use that patent for your benefit. Without that, it will not be accepted. So if you have got your own patents, yes, wonderful. Go ahead with it, and it will be certainly useful for getting a project through that.
Malvika, you have a question, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question regarding any guidelines related to the instruments which we bought under BIG. Suppose the instrument is not working after 5 years or 10 years of the grant. So what we can do with the instrument? Can we discard them?
The life of the project is 18 months.
Yeah, so right.
As long as it works 18 months for you, then it's fine. Okay. So the 4 or 5 years time doesn't come into the picture at all.
So there's
unless you are.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, is there any kind of audit? Suppose I have, because the project anyways will go along.
Can I take it from here, Dr. Gadre, if you don't?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I think you're talking, Malvika, about even after post-big, that asset that is a company asset and it is left with the company. Now it will now move on to wherever you have set up your office. Okay. If it is still in the incubator, then fine. But let me tell you, you're talking about a instrument absolutely that is not working anymore, right?
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah. So every
or
instrument,
in case it is working, but company moves from one incubator, one facility to the other.
No, it is the asset of the company, but it should be tagged because you've gotten it with big money. So anything you said, right? Can I just discard it? It's best not to discard it without informing your big partner. Until your royalty is complete, you're still going to be associated with your big partner, even though you might have moved on from the incubator where you existed the work, where you executed the work. You will be still associated with your big partner. For any decisions regarding that, you should always contact your big partner.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So I see another raised hand. Hari, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Dr. Gadre, so thank you for a lot of valuable guidelines. So I have just one question. So I have never applied for this big. So you said that there are some regular, you give an example like some medical device for which the grant was really good, but there was some lot of problem with the trials and the regulations. So this is something like medical devices is a big section in the big grant, but at the same time, and it is inevitable that we have to get a lot of clinical trials have to be done, and there are regulatory problems, right? So how do we judge whether, I mean, so for example, for concrete example, we are developing a stroke imaging system, which can basically with some optical methods. So does it go with big in that sense? I mean,
yeah, it does. BIRAC has got further schemes for funding. If you have BIG and you do it very well, then there is a SIBRI, which is small biotechnology research biotechnology grants. Then there is something called BIPP, is a business which is almost at TRL 7 or TRL 8, and then subsequently you can get funding from the government if it is really very, very good. But normally I would expect you to complete and then start marketing your product in 3 or 4 years time with one big and one city, because then it is really good. If a project requires 10 years to develop, then you have to look for some really alternative sources of money. Otherwise you will have a developed project, but then you will it may become necessary for you to sell it to an existing player in the market, that I have got an idea, I have done a development, and I have filed a patent on this, or I have got a patent on this, and then you sell it out and get money out of that. That is also a way of doing it. That I start a BIG, I start a company of my own, do a development, but I really cannot take it to the reality in the market because of time and money which is required, and the regulatory probably, because it takes longer time. You send an application to a regulatory, the answer will come after 3 months time, and you are not doing anything useful for yourself in that time. So if it is a product which you think that, okay, very useful, then, but it should be of time. I mean, time is of always essence in this part. 18 months of BIG, followed by probably another 18 months of SIBRI or 2 years of SIBRI. So 3 years or 3.5 years, that's all you will get for development of a project and actually going into the market. I mean, that's what I openly said in the beginning, that those which are related something directly with the human health, unless they are very well thought of the time, funding and regulatory, are really not very suitable for big.
Thank you, Dr. Gadre. I would also like to welcome our other speaker, Dr. Pranjal, who's also joined us. And so if you have, he has served on the diagnostic panel again for several cycles. And so he has a long-standing experience as both an academic and a reviewer for this grant. So if you have any questions, you can direct them to him as well. So Dr. Karuna Sagar, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you. So one of the industries in our network was asking this question. Of course, that company is not young. I think big only companies which are less than 5 years are eligible.
Yes.
Now, if these established companies, if they have a new idea, is there something in the BIRAC?
Yes, so Dr. Gadre just mentioned that, SIBRI is one such grant that will be very suitable for somebody who still wants to develop a product, so isn't exactly at an advanced TRL level, but is because of the company age is outside of the scope of pay. So I can talk to you offline about this, okay? So SIBRI, there is no upper cap to it. The first 50 lakhs comes as a grant. Any additional costs of the project, half of it will be shared by BIRAC, the other half will be will need to be raised by the applicant.
And yes, BIRAC has funded even large companies which are there for 30 years also. Through not through big, but through other schemes like SIBRI and BIP.
So, Dr. Pranjal, I'll hand the session to you for a brief moment. So, the point that just arose from a participant's question was the long time that it takes for innovations in the healthcare domain, right? So, how would you advise, especially since you look at proposals and evaluate proposals in the diagnostics arena, what would be some pieces of advice that you would offer to new applicants as well as repeat applicants in the audience?
Thank you, Prakati. Actually, I'm really sorry. I was just in another meeting, so I joined a little late. So anyway, so let me come to your questions. See, whenever I'm reviewing for Big Four's last several cycles, as you already mentioned. So what actually we see during at the time of review, and what exactly we check when we go for the final presentation of the shortlisted ones. So the idea is basically at the time of review is the feasibility, right? And the prior experience largely of the applicants. And the most important thing is what? The team, the whole team. For example, like I encountered one project, it was related with some kind of a cancer. But in the whole team, the clinician was not that much strong. He was like, very initial stage, a doctor basically. And moreover, the sample size and such kind of thing was not mentioned. So this is very, very critical in terms of evaluation of the projects at the level of screening. So this is one thing. And another thing is what the PI should be very much, involved in that type of research since a little longer time, except the newcomers. If they are proposing something new with collaboration of some other people, that is fine. But if it is very a project which is very much towards like a clinic side, that kind of system is very much important. So this is at the stage of like the review process. Okay. Now, when the process of review is finished and it comes to our table for the final evaluation and presentation. So in that particular aspect, it's not like by rule, but we always see like what is the preliminary data? Is there any such kind of data is present? As I said, it's not mandatory, but it gives a little confidence to the expert panel in the task force. So that is one thing. Another thing is what sometimes I personally see, and other member we discuss off record, that the things looks very fascinating, but sometimes the fundamental science behind that is very dicey. So you will see a very beautiful stories coming out of that, but the problem comes sometimes the fundamental stories. So that has to be taken care very carefully, right? When you are giving the final presentation in terms of in front of the task force members. So this thing, one thing, and the last thing is what the onboard team in terms of the commercial partners, or else if somebody is coming from the academic side, their commitment to develop their own startup kind of thing like in 1 year. So that these things are very important when you defend the project in the final stage. So that is my opinion from my side, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chandra. Again, to all of the participants here, this is your chance to ask our two speakers today, both very seasoned evaluators of this grant and also domain experts to boot, who have a very good idea about their respective domains and can guide you as entrepreneurs as well and innovators as well. So please raise your hand and ask a question. Yes, Dr. Ajay, please go ahead. Please unmute yourself. Hello. And ask your question. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good evening. My question is about a stage of ideation. It is basically up to TRL 3 level. It is declared. Now, since it is ideation, so many startups may come up who do not have lab access. No, I'm not telling the startups, that innovators. Many innovators come up who don't have a lab access, and hence they substantiate their ideas with the research done at some other with some others' works. Okay. Now the problem, what I have realized, that in previous some of our mentees, regarding them, the comments were like the work is still too preliminary, it is not yet done, and whatever. But the thing is that since it is an ideation grant to begin with, so is it that the reviewers themselves are aligned that this is really an ideation grant and we have to see that it is up to TRL 3? Or there is a confusion among the reviewers themselves? A bit strong question, I think.
No, good, Dr. Chakravarti, you raised this particular issue. I entirely agree with you that at times a comment comes that there is not enough, support or enough data or things like it for a new project. But I think most of the people who go through the project proposals online or sit in the committee to together to sit to accept a project proposal thing, know that this is an ideation grant. We have to differentiate between what is meant by an ideation grant, which is entirely on a thin paper, and something which is thought over properly. The committee also looks at whether the idea itself has been thought over by the applicant properly, and whether he has got the methodologies which, he has thought over the methodology which he will practice in a laboratory for doing that thing. So imagine I want to make a new chair, and unless I know exactly what is meant by a chair, what the material really required for it, what experiments will I do for making that chair, unless it is thought over and conceptualized, it remains only an idea. Okay, and then such projects will not be accepted. I also agree that there is not enough facility in our country to go to a laboratory and work out that, okay, this is my idea, and why don't you give me some facility so that I'll work for 3 months and then see whether it works. But that unfortunately doesn't exist. It doesn't exist neither in the universities nor in a laboratory of CSIR or ICAR or ICMR. The scientists and professors are not very receptive to allowing someone else from the outside of their periphery, outside their circumference, to come in their laboratory and physically work out. But then BIG is something which is related to that. Because people are not allowing others to come into their laboratories or facilities and work, they can go to an incubator and then say, okay, that I have got an idea which is like this, and let me be incubating in your incubator and then try to get a fund from big. I agree that there is a gap between very good ideas which are there on the table or on the mind of young people, and then actually trying to work it out. There is a gap there. I understand that. We will have to bring that into our academic culture now, that okay, let young people try out what they have there in mind, and so that new ideas come out of that. And that's really a real requirement. I understand that. But from BIRAC side or from big side, probably people understand this is a BIG ignition grant, and then this is at the ideation stage. The TRL will have to be 1 or 2, and then it is not really required to have enough data or enough proof or things for development. But the idea has to be very clear. That's really required.
Yes,
And I will just want to add just one more thing to what Dr. Kadri said, is if this is strictly in a design phase. Okay, so this cycle, we had somebody who was proposing a reactor. I will not go into the details, but he had just the design. As Dr. Kadri was like, he knew how to build it. He had, but there was nothing physical. So all we could advise him was to provide the design as carefully annotated as possible, so that the reviewer could understand what the different features that he was going to incorporate and so on. So following on what Dr. Kadri advised, that your idea should be good enough, and the design whether it be a design or the process that you're proposing should be clear enough for the reviewer to understand the importance of what you're proposing. There's another question from Murli. Murli, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
It's been a pleasure attending the meeting. And I must also thank you for the information provided towards support for existing organizations financially. But for existing organizations which are functioning and their products are already in the market, now in case we need to go in for an expansion, getting ready the infrastructure is so very costly these days. Does the central government provide any support or preference in getting an allocation of sheds in small industrial areas of the country, wherever the entrepreneur wants to expand?
Dr. Gadre, would you like to take that?
Yeah. If it is related to biotech, then BIRAC does it through its own schemes called SIBRI, Small Biotechnology Industries Research Initiative, SBIRI. Or if it is beyond that, that I have already done a development and then I want to just get money for scale up, then BIRAC is not the right place, because unless there is a research component which is strong enough, it's just only a scale up, then BIRAC will not fund it. Because the reviewers will say that, okay, this is only a scale up, and then it is not really fit for biotechnology, BIRAC as such. Then you have to look for some other sources from government, like DST has got Technology Development Board, TBD has got schemes, or some other funding sources. If it is biotechnology and research component is strong in that, then at different levels, BIRAC has schemes like BIG, SIBRI, BIPT, and above that as well. So depending upon what stage of development you are in and what is the quantity of research which is involved, you can apply for one of these schemes.
Fine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And to add to what Dr. Gadre said, if you remember the slide that I flashed, there's also some incubator channeled grants through the BIRAC Seed and LEAP program, okay, for commercialization or scale up, so where you should have a proper developed product or technology and you want to scale up, you can get support. However, the incubator will have their own investor committee and their own evaluation for that, because they will share an equity in that that project. And so there are other such granting opportunities available for scale up of small businesses as well.
Thank
you.
So
any other questions for our speakers today, Dr. Pranjal and Dr. Gadre, who's been sharing a lot of information, and we're really lucky to have both of them today here on our panel. If you have any further question, please raise your hands or post in the Q&A box. I will just ask Dr. Pranjal one more question. Dr. Pranjal, from your experience, and I've already asked Dr. Gadre this from his experience serving on the IBT panel, from your experience serving on the diagnostics panel, what are some of the common pitfalls that applicants make in their written proposals, in their presentations, that you would that you can provide some insights on how to better those points?
Sorry. So yeah. So actually, this is very critical. So whenever we think about a diagnostic, kind of the devices, so the major problem when we see that is in terms of the implementation, right? Like for example, we encounter a lot of devices or sensors. They talks about that they will be testing in the blood or this kind of that kind of a real matrix. But the problem comes, they are not that much aware of handling those kind of the samples, the treatment rather, because most of the people who are proposing, they are trained engineers. So we feel that the development of the standard prototypes is very good. In standard conditions, it works very nice. But when we deploy it, so there is always a problem, right? So that kind of thing should be very much taken care when the people, they are developing their proposals. This is one thing. Another thing is what? The pricing. Most of the people who write the projects, especially from academia sides, so we have always noticed that they are not able to provide the exact kind of the cost and the what are the people who are competing with those things. So that slides should be there, or that kind of information should be there in the proposal in much detail. because eventually the idea of the big or this kind of the proposal is what you have to deploy and you have to compete, like you have to transfer technology or translational kind of research. So this kind of things is very, very critical. So many a times we feel that this kind of information is missing in a large number of projects. Moreover, it's not only, as I mentioned earlier also, the basis of the technology in terms of the science is also very important. Like we develop a technology, but the science is little dicey, so it don't work basically, right? So my request will be with the participants will be what, that please focus on the type of the things basis what we are talking, and then you deploy it. Because what happens, this kind of research like the biotech big or something like that, this is a application oriented things. So you know the science, and then you are trying to use that science for the development of the technology, right? So kindly focus on this aspect very carefully. So that is my comment, Pradati, on this particular point. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chandra. Again, to the participants here, if you have questions, please raise your hands, type it in the Q&A box. If there are no further questions, then I would like to thank our speakers for today, for this wonderfully insightful session. Together with the participants, we also learned a lot from your experience, and we really thank you for taking time off of your busy schedules and joining us here today and sharing with our participants how they should think about the big grant and what other funding opportunities are available to them, and many more critical insights from your end. For the participating incubators who again collaborated with us for this session and are present here today, I request all participants to please avail of their contact information, get in touch with them if you are geographically close to them, and get their services. Many of our big associate partners themselves are involved in active help in mentoring and other support for big applicants as well. And of course, on behalf of SINE, I'm posting my contact information. Please call me or write to me, and I will be happy to help you with your next big application. And I request all of you, especially the participants here, to please remember that big is an opportunity of a lifetime. As you have heard our speakers, this is your foot through the door for BIRAC supported grants. We've heard private investors who've said that if you have a big grant, they feel that the technology is validated the science is solid, the technology is, has been validated at some scale. And so they are very trusting and very confident that such proposals and such innovators will be able to make it big with whatever product or technology that they are availing or they're developing. One thing to keep in mind, as you heard from our experts here, these are the very same experts who are going to look at your proposals. So the feedback that they give you is going to be an invaluable support in your journey.
Yeah.
So I hope you keep that in mind and apply for this grant as well.
But Daddy, this is not true. We may be there, we may not be there.
No, but the fact is that the feedback that you provide really helps them a lot.
It's a past experience. That's all.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
And gross opinion from our side. I mean, what we see over the years, right? And even in the final presentation, we just encountered and we shared those experiences.
And so, yes, they're being extremely modest, but let me just say that this mentorship or this feedback that you get from them is going to be a huge value add in further refining your product, your technology, taking it to the market and having a successful business. So thank you again, all of you. I hope to see some good proposals from the participants today. Thank you.
Shall we eat?